Good morning, friends. I hope you all had a wonderful week. I'm Miss Carrie, and I'm so excited to be back with you this week. This week, we're going to talk about a very important idea: loyalty. We're still in Exodus. We're just going to be in Exodus 16 today. I hope you guys all had a great week and a good night's rest and are ready to learn. But before we start our lesson, let's worship and sing some praises to Jesus.
The sun is shining down on me. My heart is full of love and peace. God's given me so much. I want the world around to see how much He really means to me. God's given me so much. So I'm gonna get my hands up, I'm gonna get my hands up, and wave them all around, wave them up and down. I'm gonna get my feet up, I'm gonna make them jump up to the sky, way up to the sky. And I'm gonna give a shout out, I'm gonna make it so loud, so that everyone around is gonna see what God has given to me. The sun is shining down on me, my heart is full of love and peace. God's given me so much. I want the world around to see how much He really means to me. God's given me so much. So I'm gonna get my hands up, I'm gonna get my hands up, and wave them all around, wave them up and down. I'm gonna get my feet up, I'm gonna make them jump up to the sky, way up to the sky. And I'm gonna give a shout out, I'm gonna make it so loud, so that everyone around is gonna see what God has given to me.
Wow, wasn't that worship wonderful? It just always makes me so happy to sing praises to God, and it helps me to get in the mood to focus on learning. And now we're just going to take a minute, we're going to thank God and pray before we get started with our lesson. Abba, Father, Lord, thank you so much for each of my little friends that are here today. Thank you for the blessing that each of my friends is. Lord, I pray that you would just help us to learn exactly what you have us to learn today. Thank you for being loyal. Thank you for loving us. Thank you that you're always with us and you never turn your back on us. Thank you that you always provide for us, Lord. Thank you for being our God and loving us. In Jesus' precious name, amen. So, today is all about loyalty. So, I want you to imagine with me. Imagine that your best friend invites you to a sleepover. Your friend's mom makes the best cookies and she has promised to make them for you. And she has some fun games planned for you to play. So the sleepover is set. And you're super excited because next Friday you guys are having your sleepover. But then you go to school and the popular girl in class asks you to come to her sleepover. Or the popular boy in class asks you to come to his sleepover, his party. And they say they're gonna have bounce house and pony rides and all the food you want. And if you go, you're in. But if you don't go, you may not get invited again. So what do? You know the worst part? Your best friend is not invited. So do you go to the party? Think about it. What would you do in that situation? Be honest. What would you want to do in that situation? So, in our lives, there's always going to be times where we have to choose between being in one place and being in another. This last weekend, I had to choose between being able to take my daughter somewhere or following through with the commitment I had made with the church and the women's ministry. So I had to tell my daughter that I had already made a commitment to the women's ministry so that I wasn't able to get her to where she wanted to go. You know, sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's not even that one place is bad or one choice is bad. It's just we can't do everything. But sometimes we have to choose. And I'll give you an example that if you have a friend maybe who's ever said bad things about another friend, and you have to choose whether you stand up for that friend and say, that wasn't nice, or that wasn't true, we shouldn't talk about that person, or if you keep your mouth shut because you're afraid of losing the friend who says bad things. And if you're afraid of losing the friend who says bad things, I want you to know that we're not really being a good friend. So you might want to think about if that's really the friend you want to have. So today, we're really going to look at why it's important that we're loyal and that we are going to honor God as we see how loyal God is. God is so loyal. Loyalty means sticking with somebody, means supporting them and being there even when it's difficult. In the example above, the loyal thing for you to do would be to go to your best friend's sleepover because you committed to your friend. What is one word that helps you that you would use when somebody isn't loyal to you? I think of the word sad. It makes me sad. It hurts me. But we're going to dig into the Bible and look at how God showed loyalty to people he committed to. So, God had chosen Israel to be his people. We've been talking a lot about Israel, and he promised to look after them at all times. And he wanted them to follow him at all times. And God committed himself to them. That means that he would walk with them. He was there for them. He wasn't too busy for them. God is never too busy for us. So God freed the Israelites from slavery in a miraculous way. He sent plagues on Egypt, who were keeping the Israelites as slaves. And finally, the Egyptians let the Israelites go. Then when the Egyptians tried to follow the Israelites, God split a sea in half. So the Israelites had an escape route on dry ground like no one had ever seen before. After that, the Israelites traveled through the desert and couldn't find any water except the really bitter water at Marah that we talked about last week. And God made the water sweet and taste so good. God's loyalty provided a ton of miracles for his people. After seeing all the amazing stuff, within just like about a month, you'd think the Israelites would loyally trust God as they kept walking through the desert. But let's see what happens. In Exodus, the Lord gives Israelites food every day. So we're going to start in Exodus 16:3, and it says, Then the Israelites said to them, We wish the Lord had put us to death in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat. We ate all of the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert. You must want the entire community to die of hunger. So they just saw that God provided for them when they were thirsty, but now they're hungry. Do they run to God? Do they pray? Do they ask God? Or do they sit around and complain? Well, even though they complained and even though they did not trust God, you know what? He still looked out for them. And here's what he did. In Exodus 16:4 and 5, it says, Then the Lord spoke to Moses. He said, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people must go out each day. Have them gather enough bread for that day. Here is how I will put them to the test. I will see if they will follow my directions. On the 6th day, they must prepare what they bring in. On that day, they must gather twice as much as on the other days. So God rained down bread, manna from heaven. And he said, you can only get so much each day. And at the end of the day, if you don't eat it all, throw it away. If you don't throw it away, there's a consequence. And that consequence is that it's going to get moldy and gross. So you only gather enough for each day because God wanted them to trust him. So let's see what happens. In Exodus 16:13, it says, That evening quail came and covered the camp. In the morning, the ground around the camp was covered with dew. When the dew was gone, the thin flakes appeared on the desert floor. They looked like frost on the ground. The people of Israel saw the flakes. They asked each other, What's that? They did not know what it was. Moses said to them, It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Here is what the Lord commands. He has said, Each of you should gather as much as you need. Take 2 quarts for each person who lives in your tent. So, now, all of a sudden, they go from having no food to exactly enough food. Just what they need for the day, right? I don't know about you, hopefully you always have enough food. I know that in our house we have more than enough food for the day. But they got just enough to trust God for the day so that the next day they would trust again, right? So if we jump over to Exodus 16:31, it says, the people of Israel called the bread manna. It was like white coriander seed. It tasted like wafers that were made with honey. So not only was this manna filling and nutritious and what they needed, it tasted good. God didn't just give them bland, or just like with the water, it was sweet water. God gave them something good to eat, something they'd never had, but they provided. God had specific rules about how to collect the food, and he told them to collect only what they needed for their tents and not to collect extra to try to save for the next day. So what do you think the Israelites did? Let's see what the Israelites do, because I know that they seem to not make the best decisions. What do you think? You think they're going to do the right thing this time? Verse 17. The people of Israel did what they were told. Some gathered a lot, some gathered a little. When they measured it out, those who gathered a lot didn't have too much, and those who gathered a little had enough. All of them gathered only what they needed. Wow, isn't that amazing? They actually did what they were asked to do by God. Yay. Then Moses said to them, don't keep any of it until morning. Some of them didn't pay attention to Moses. So quickly, they just did what they were told, and now, in the next moment, what happens? They didn't pay any attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to stink. So Moses became angry with them. So, as I was saying, it goes bad. And if you don't know what maggots are, they're like these little worms that turn into flies. So, they're pretty gross, and you definitely don't want them in your food, right? So, when they focus on themselves again, instead of trusting God, there was a consequence. But after that, the Israelites followed God's rules, and they didn't pick up any extra. God had different rules on the sixth day. He wanted to give Israelites a gift so they wouldn't have to gather manna or cook it on the seventh day each week. So he told them that on the sixth day, they should collect double what they needed and save some for the seventh day. That way, it was a day of rest. Good morning, it's the sixth day, so come on out and collect double of everything you need. Do they do it? Do they listen? Yes. And you know what? God is loyal. He provided enough. If they collected for 2 days, they had enough for 2 days. But at the end of that seventh day, they better not have anything left, right? He gave the Israelites enough food that they wouldn't have to go out the next day. But the Israelites, once again, let's see what they do. Right? Verse 27. How did I do that? Sorry, guys. My paper flipped too far. I was thinking the wrong chapter. Here we are. Okay, much better. In spite of what Moses said, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather their flakes, but they didn't have any. Then the Lord spoke to Moses. He said, how long will all of you keep refusing to obey my commandments and my teaching? Keep in mind that I have given you the Sabbath day. That is why on the sixth day I have given you bread for 2 days. All of you must stay where you are on the seventh day. No one can go out. So even though God said, just spend a little more time on the sixth day. Get enough. You'll have enough. Some of the Israelites didn't trust God. And they got up on the seventh day, and they were surprised to find out that there was nothing there. And what did God say? Why won't you trust me? So, God offered them a gift by making manna last and saving them from the work on the seventh day. He wanted them to have a chance of rest, but they focused on themselves and wanted to make sure they didn't miss any food. They were selfish and greedy. In Exodus 30, it says, so the people rested on the seventh day. Now this is important because God gave them a gift of rest. So if they just did what they were supposed to, they had a whole day to rest and enjoy themselves. So, I hope that in this time that you think a lot about God is loyal and He gives us things that we need. Maybe not always what we want, maybe not always how we want it, but God is loyal to us and He doesn't leave us nor forsake us. You know what? We can see that in verse 35. Listen to this. God loved them so much that He provided for them every day. Listen to this. The people of Israel ate manna for 40 years. 40 years. They ate it until they came to the land that was settled. They ate it until they reached the border of Canaan. Can you imagine? For 40 years, it was right there every day for them. Well, kids, I hope you have an amazing week and we will see you next time. Bye.